The other thing I want to encourage you to do, if you're in a situation that's kind of draining you dry, if the mentee is sort of sucking you dry and is really, really challenging, I do want to encourage you, find other support mechanisms. Have some supportive friends around you that you can talk to. Make sure you use the resources in the program. Do whatever you need to do to make sure your cup is replenished, that you yourself can stay fresh and invigorated for those mentee appointments. You don't have to depend on the mentee to do that for you, but please ensure that you've got those mechanisms in place for yourself so that you don't burn out. All of this having been said, this setting goals and attaining them stage of the mentoring relationship, I have really good news for you. Once you get that habit in place, you have launched yourselves into the 4th stage of the mentoring relationship, which is friendship. And there is no better place to be as a mentor.
Nice. Way over there. I think we lost the ball. Just check it.
The final stage of the mentoring relationship is what we call the planned termination stage. Those words are selected quite intentionally. Once you have fulfilled your commitment to the Brookings County Youth Mentoring Program and to the child, we can talk about whether or not there's an appropriate transition out of that mentoring relationship. Not before you've fulfilled your commitment, but certainly at that time, it's appropriate to review and decide whether or not you want to continue. I have to tell you, I do have mentors that are going on 4 and 5 years, so it is not our expectation that you will terminate at the end of your committed period of time, but it is a possibility that you'll have to reassess whether or not you can continue as a mentor. We encourage you to do that. We encourage you to stay in on purpose, if you will. But if you get to the place where you think that terminating the mentoring relationship or transitioning out of the mentoring relationship is the appropriate thing to do, there are some good steps that you can take to make that a healthy transition for yourself and for the child. I can't overemphasize how important it is for it to be a healthy transition. So the first step in that, of course, is to let the program director, in this case myself, know that you are planning on terminating or ending your mentoring relationship. The reason is there are tools that I can put in your hands, some hints as to how to get that done that'll be most helpful to the child and to yourself in easing out of that relationship. I want you to use these suggestions, use the transition out of the mentoring relationship as an asset for the child. As I've told you before, many of these children have experienced aborted relationships where the ending was quite abrupt and even tumultuous. What you want to do is demonstrate to this child that not all relational transitions are like that. Some relationships just kind of morph. They change, the structure of them changes, but the friendship doesn't necessarily go away. Those are things that you can build into the child's life. One of the ways that you can use this as an asset is to recall as you visit with the child about the change coming up in your life. Maybe there's a scheduling change, or maybe you're relocating, or maybe your life circumstances have changed. Maybe you've got health issues. Maybe you're starting an internship. Maybe you need to go visit the grandchildren for several months and you need to transition out of the relationship. Use that as a time to talk through with the child that these things happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they did anything wrong, that they had any kind of a negative effect on your life. In fact, you want to recall the positives. You want to talk about the things that you enjoyed the most about mentoring them. You want to tell them the things that you've seen that they've grown in, what you've learned from them, how they've helped you. You want to leave this on a very positive note for the child. You want to give them a sense that this has been a meaningful experience for you as well as for them. and that you're not at all eager to get out of their life, but you just need to move on to other things. I have many, many mentors who have used their last few appointments with their mentees as an opportunity to make a scrapbook. They've gone back and they've printed the digital photographs that they've taken over the 6 months or a year. And they make a little scrapbook. Maybe they make two, side by side. And they use that as sort of their closure activity. I do have a document that I send out for every mentor that indicates that they're terminating. I go ahead and send them a sheet of suggestions as to how to have that conversation with the child. You want to look to the future for them. You want to talk about what's next for them. Don't promise them that I'll get them a new mentor immediately, because that's not something I can commit to. But as things transition, perhaps they'll get a new mentor, or perhaps they'll find a new friend who can help them with some of these things. So look to the future for them. Decide together whether or not you're going to try to stay in touch. And if you decide yes, do it. If you decide to promise to each other that you're going to email once a month or you're going to write them once a year, I don't care what the promise is, just keep the promise, please. And if you don't feel like you can stay in touch, that's okay, but you have to help them enter into that decision with you and understand that decision. Our job is to teach good relationship at every stage. This empowers your mentee. Now, I have to tell you at this point, I've had an awful lot of circumstances where I've run into a mentee and their guardian or their parent just sort of in the process of food shopping or being out and about in the community. And I'll say to them, how's it going with so-and-so, the mentor? And they'll say, oh, well, he came twice, or she came once, and then we never saw her again. This has happened more times than I can count. In one instance, I ran into a mom just last night who said the first mentor came once. No, I'm sorry, the first mentor came several times, after 3 or 4 times, and then disappeared. And so I was very careful to assign somebody that promised me that they wouldn't do that. And then the second mentor once, and then never showed up again. And this child was not even able to look me in the eye. You see, there's become a broken trust there now, and I've got to rebuild that. So please don't be the mentor that just goes away. This needs to be a planned termination. If it has to happen earlier than your commitment time, please tell me. In fact, this is something I want to emphasize. I've hit very hard on hanging in there with your kid and pressing through the hard times and not going away. I have a concern that in sending that message, you may choose to not tell me because you're embarrassed or because you're ashamed or because your pride won't let you admit that this isn't working and you want out. And so you just don't tell me. What that does is it leaves the child hanging. I'm assuming they have a mentor. They don't, and I don't know. And so please, just out of consideration for all parties involved, whether it's hard to communicate or not, please do communicate that you intend to get out of the mentoring relationship. I'll coach you through it. I need to reinstate that child on the pending list so that they are activated for another mentor, and you need to let us know. The message needs to come from you. I'm in the middle of 2 circumstances right now where the mentor has left and told me, but didn't tell the child before they relocated and moved out of town. And so now I have the unenviable job of going to the child and saying, you know, I know you really cared for your mentor, Susie, but she's gone. So you don't want that message coming from me. If you're moving, you know ahead of time that you're moving. Please tell the child yourself, tell the family yourself. I'll help you do that, but it needs to come from you. Whatever you do, don't lose track of your kiddo. If you're not sure you can make the commitment, please hold off until you can clear something from your schedule or you can see a way to fold the mentee into your normal activities before you make the commitment. Please don't make the commitment under the stipulation that if it works out, you'll follow through. That's not fair to the child. It's really not fair to the program either. The 3 attributes of your mentoring need to be consistency, reliability, and no surprises. This child needs to be able to depend on you. And so we are trusting you to follow through on the commitments that you make to this child. And when it comes to that time, when you need to do a planned termination, visit with us and we'll help you get it done in a healthy way. We're going to transition now into a section where we're going to talk about some of the unique attributes of the Brookings County Youth Mentoring Program and the children with which we deal. First of all, I've mentioned it before, but the children are not in our program for no reason. But I do want to reassure you that we represent in our program the full spectrum of needs. Of course, on one end of the spectrum, we have children who are on the brink, who are sort of possibly going to be in serious trouble if they don't get somebody in their life who will help give them some guidance. And those are children on one end of the spectrum. We have all kinds of syndromes in our town, just like any other town, of substance abuse and physical abuse of children. We address some of those kids' needs through the mentoring program. Most of those children are in other supporting structures as well. Then if you look at it as a bell curve, of course we have children in the middle who, for various reasons in the family system, have some pretty extraordinary needs, just to have another older person draw alongside them and help them through a difficult period of time. But I do want to say that we have other children on the other end of the spectrum who simply have either self-selected into the program because they just think it sounds like fun to have a mentor. I have one precious family that I relate with all the time, both of whose children were mentees in the program in middle school because they didn't have an older sibling of the same gender, and they really kind of wanted a big brother in the boys' case and a big sister in the girls' case. The family is very functional, very loving family, very accommodating, very providing, but they just wanted an older sibling to do fun things with, and we were able to provide for those kids just to have that sort of a playmate. And in fact, in the boy's case, he went on to develop some skills that the mentor had in the area of wrestling and that kind of thing. So it was really kind of a fun adventure to be able to assign those children a mentor who really were on the other end of the spectrum altogether. So I want to take this sort of the stigma out of the mentee label. There are all kinds of children in our program. We also have a sub-entity of the Brookings County Youth Mentoring Program called Healthy Parents, Healthy Families, and that entity is designed to address the needs of the young woman in high school or maybe just out of high school who finds herself unexpectedly pregnant, and she's here about to have a baby, perhaps doesn't have a significant nurturing role in her life. Maybe mom is real busy doing shift work or something like that. And what we like to do is provide a gal who can come alongside her and help her through this experience, certainly through the pregnancy and through the childbirth experience, and then help her with whatever choices come at that time to parent the child or to give the child up for adoption or whatever. But we don't want that young lady going through that experience by herself. And so Healthy Parents, Healthy Families is designed to have someone walk with this young mom, and in one case the dad was involved as well, and walk them through that experience of parenting in those early years. So that's another sub-entity of our program to which we love to recruit mentors. You can specify on your application the age of the child or young adult that you would like to mentor, the end of the spectrum that you're interested in, whether you want somebody that's coming out of the judicial system, the court system, or whether you just want somebody who's really looking for somebody to do something fun with. You can specify hobbies, interests, and even on the application you can specify some concerns that you may have. I prefer not to mentor somebody. I had one mentor say, I prefer not to mentor somebody with a weight problem because hits a little close to home for me, and I wouldn't be able to really help them with that issue. And so that candor was just so appreciated by the program because we were then able to give her someone she was way more comfortable with in that particular area where she felt she had weaknesses. The full spectrum thing should be an attractive piece to you because we can really find just about any child for you that will be a good match for you. We also have the children indicate their interests and hobbies and concerns so that when we do that match, we have those line up as well as we possibly can. I've mentioned you before, we have a parent commitment form. Just as you're making a commitment, so is the family making a commitment. I wanted to remind you of that. For a moment now, I'm going to have Rose Stee, who is an extension educator in the 4-H and Youth Development Program, talk to you about the developmental stages of the youth. Just hit the highlights so that you'll have a sense of what the child that you might be mentoring might need.